Then it's in a really surreal dream. If the world wasn't so surreal already, there we are. So welcome to Helen Millar's Head to Heart Living. This channel, if you haven't joined me before, is all around how to live less directed by our ego, by our mind, and more tapping into the heart center, to other forms of wisdom, the connection to all, and essentially moving away from a life sponsored by fear to one sponsored by love. That sounds good. Hit subscribe, hit the bell. You can check out my videos. There's a mixture of conversations with fascinating people like we have this evening, or every Tuesday there is either a tarot or a chat with somebody as well. So, and there's a lot of interesting content that's previously gone that you might want to check out. But I'm very excited today to bring in Richie Bostock, otherwise known as the Breath Guy, who is one of the, I would say, world's leading experts in breathwork. Yes, like
I'll take it. I'll take it.
He's written a book and has been covered by all sorts of organizations across the globe. And at the moment has an amazing offering for free on Instagram, but we'll come to that in a moment. First of all, Richie, hello. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to see you again. And, I just absolutely love what you do. Head to heart really is the most important journey for all of us to make, right? So to have a mission and dedicate yourself to helping people to get there, there's nothing more important. So just want to honor you for that.
Thank you very much. And I just, on that note, people might think that sounds like rainbows and unicorns, but if you, to really live from your heart, is a daily struggle, because it's so easy, to be triggered by people, to, allow our lower selves or our shallow selves or to be in reaction, and constantly responding to stimulus rather than taking time to behave and respond how you'd like to, is a journey. And, being able to find respect for everybody is also a challenge at times.
Oh, sorry. Oh my goodness. Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree. For many people, the idea of, live from your heart or be more in your heart, or what does your heart say, is kind of, a bit wishy-washy woo-woo. But, really, what's quite interesting is how science has shown that actually the heart does have its own mind that is measurable. There are 6,000 neuronal cells in the heart that act as its own mini brain. So it's the same type of cells that make up your brain. So there is definitely some sort of activity in the heart. They can measure the electromagnetic field emanating from your heart, and it's actually much bigger than the one that is emanating from your head. So it's quite fascinating, and I'm sure more and more we're going to understand just how brilliant, well, this organ, but also what it holds, the information that it holds in this, this space has for us. And, that's where the breath comes in as well. I always say the breath is the quickest way to come out of your mind and into your body. Because of the actual very real physiological changes that happen when you start to use your breath in certain ways. Can't help but start to turn off that talking monkey mind and bring you into presence, which is really, it's your heart. So but I'm very excited to be here to chat with you about it all.
So am I, especially when I love it when people bring in science, because I think a lot of the pushbacks people have are other, it sounds wafty, but when you can bring in those numbers and those, that proof, some people really like that. Other people need different levels of proof, but yeah, it's really helpful. And also our stomachs, our gut, we have intelligence also in the, in our tummy, and that's why it's so important to look at what you eat as well, because that has such effect on how we feel and what kind of mood we're in, and whether your food is made with love, like literally, like, or it's been in a microwave and processed, and it's such a different experience, not just on the nutrition and bodybuilding and things like that, but actually like how we operate and what is the fuel that's running through us.
I mean, there's a reason why all ancient traditions, when they look at energy centers or power centers, there's always, there might be multiple, but the main ones are always three: one in the head, one in the chest, and then one in the belly. and you look at any form of energy medicine, they'll always refer to these three main centers of energy. And we need to be able to move through them throughout our daily life. So, how much can we intuit, how much can we, analyze and see with our mind, and how much can we feel with our hearts, and how much can we intuit with our belly? And the combination of the three and being able to jump between all three is it's like a superpower,
That's
so
what I'm here for. I want to
yeah.
sleep.
And I must say, I like what you say about if your food is is made with love. If we first met through me joining you in your cacao ceremonies, and I in your instructions on how to prepare cacao, you always talk about making it like a ritual, right? And really putting a lot of focus and attention and love. And I swear it does have such an impactful effect, when you really put so much intention into something. And so, for me, it's a huge learning curve. So for all my food now, I put my intention to everything that I eat because of you.
Win. I love this. This is great. On that note, it's really like I have a radio in my kitchen, but years ago, I just plonked the radio on while I was cooking, and like the news would come in, and and then there'd be, I don't know, whatever music I didn't like, or some chat show and people calling in and having an argument, and all of that energy is of course going into the food, but we don't think about that most of the time. Most of the time we're just in function. We don't think about energy and intention and waves. But yeah, like one thing I've really enjoyed in the last year is having more time to cook food. At the beginning, I was a bit like, I didn't realize that, just know, because I would be out a lot, so I'd be taking food with me or buying food outside. Just quite how much cooking and cleaning 3 meals a day requires. But then I moved past that frustration into the ritual of it and really enjoying it.
I've moved out of London about coming up to 3 months ago now, and live in the middle of middle of nowhere. So I haven't gone takeout or gone to a restaurant in, God, I don't know how long. It's been a while. And I've just so loved cooking again, because I think, when you're in central London, it's so easy just to pop out, grab something, Deliveroo or Uber Eats or something like that. But you're right, home cooked food always tastes better, right? So I'm loving it, absolutely loving it.
Great.
Mm.
So that was a little detour. I think onto food and cooking. What I would really like to, because I loved breathwork, and before the last year, but it was within the last year when, of course, globally everybody's going through a different level of, everything. You can end that sentence with any word you want. And then, of course, I feel that lots of people I know personally, and for myself, there's a lot of emotional, personal stuff that all started happening on top of a global level. And it was, I can't remember what it was. I think it was in around sort of March, April, when there was lots of free content being put online by people. And breathwork came up, and I thought, oh yes, great, I'll do some of that. And I just had the most extraordinary reaction and experience and release that I haven't had before, without being in some form of ceremony where where you're working with a plant or something to help access different parts of your consciousness. And also what I loved about it was that it didn't go into story at all. It didn't take me into, oh, this is this being released, or remember that pain. It just was the energy and waves of emotion. I was like, what am I crying about? And it didn't matter, because it felt like it was going away rather than coming up to be kind of wallowed in. It felt like this is the process of it leaving. And then I just became like a breathwork fiend, and was constantly for the rest of the year. And then I started working with breathwork practitioners and working with them with cacao. And then we met. And so I'm really interested to hear your perspective of what breathwork is, for people who haven't tried it before, who don't know what that is?
Well, starting from the very beginning, breathwork really is any time that you become aware of your breathing and then start to change it to create some sort of physical, mental, or emotional, and even spiritual benefit for yourself. So it's a very broad scope of work. And in its most simplest form, it can be learning how to breathe for 2 to 3 minutes, maybe a 2 to 3 minute technique in the moment or in the heat of a moment when you're feeling stressed to help you to relax or to create some energy if you're feeling tired or to help you to fall asleep. Using your breath to create a change in your state fast. Um, that's like the simplest way you can start to think of breath work. But then you come along the spectrum in the middle and you start to have things like Qigong, the yogic breath work, pranayam, things like the Wim Hof method. Some people may be familiar with. Wait, it's more of a dedicated breathing exercise where you might sit or lie down or be standing and spend 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes breathing in a certain way in order to create some sort of shift for yourself, whether it's physically, mentally, or emotionally, or energetically in particular as well. And on the other end of the spectrum, which is probably more like what you're describing, is what we call integrative breath work, where you can use the breath as an incredible form of therapy. Typically, it looks like lying down and breathing in a certain way for anywhere between 45 minutes to 3 hours, usually. And you can, through going into these altered states of consciousness, just like you describe, have these profound releases of emotion or trauma or just tension that's built up in your nervous system. Things that you might not even know were there. Like you said, you didn't have a story attached. You just started to feel things coming up, and just by being able to express it and knowing that you're in a safe place and that you survived that, whatever brought in that event, brought in that emotion, it means then that you are able to integrate it, close the cycle of emotional trauma there. So it's really impactful and profound work, and it can be an incredible tool for spiritual exploration as well. The amount of times that I've had some quite transcendental experiences by just lying down and breathing, akin to doing things like plant medicine, and actually, although it hasn't been fully proven, we haven't put someone in fMRI and proved it for sure. But what the theory is that what happens when you do a breathwork session, particularly this integrative style of breathwork, what happens in the brain is very, very similar to if you were to do some sort of psychedelic medicine. So it's why a lot of people kind of lump it together sometimes and say it's sort of in the same sort of realm. And so that's quite exciting.
Because I was just wanted to, because DMT is something that naturally occurs in everything, but we only release it in our brain, as far as I'm aware, when we're born and when we die. And obviously, that when we're born, that's that first breath, isn't it, that we take in, and when we die, it's our last. So I wonder if it's because we're suddenly breathing in a way that we don't not ever normally.
There's
activating it in some way.
So there's certainly some theory, again, mostly theory at this point, around how breathing, especially deep diaphragmatic breathing repetitively over and over again, can change the pressure in cerebral spinal fluid in the spine, pushing the cerebral spinal fluid. I'm just going to say CSF from now on. Up into the brain, and causing a slight mild pressure up in the cranium, and this pressure can push onto the pineal gland, which sits in almost like a little kind of cul-de-sac in the center / bottom mid bit of your brain. And what the theories are is that the pineal gland is what is responsible for the assimilation and release of DMT. So this, if you're doing deep breathing over and over again, especially if it's diaphragmatic, and these intrinsic muscles in your torso are squeezing and contracting in a more dramatic way, changing the pressure CSF in your spinal column going up into your cranium, then there might be a chance that through this, what they call a piezoelectrical effect of putting pressure onto the pineal gland turning into electrical signal that then turns into an assimilation of DMT. Could be possible. Now, there's certainly breathing techniques specifically designed to try and get that to happen, where you hold your breath and squeeze a lot, tense through your body and put pressure up into your head. Quite common in Kundalini yoga, actually.
Yeah, just thinking about that.
So a lot of people are thinking that or theorizing that I wonder when people have these Kundalini awakening experiences, if it's not just Kundalini energy, but it's also a DMT release as well. So lots of interesting areas to explore. But I think the main reason why it's so similar to psychedelics is because of the effect that it has on the prefrontal cortex. So the part of your brain that's responsible for plugging you into the outside world and, runs your five senses and, is responsible for the rationalizing, the logic, the thinking mind. The theory is that through certain breathing techniques, the activity in that part of the brain starts to turn down. And through that, you are then able to better consciously access the emotional parts of you, the limbic system. It's the second layer down, the emotional centers of the brain, which is why, and it's also responsible for long-term memory as well. So it's why people might have visions of the past, might start to feel emotion, for example. By cutting off not fully cutting off, but by reducing the activity in the part of the brain that plugs you into the world through the five senses, you start to awaken perhaps other senses, which means you can start to have some sort of mystical experience, for example. But this is the exact same thing that happens when you take psychedelic medicines. It's a term called transient hypofrontality. So
You see where that wasn't necessarily at the tip of your tongue.
Yeah, I had to think about that one for a second. So hopefully we can see it, prove it happening in breathwork, but we just need to get somebody into an fMRI. That's all. And I haven't seen any studies on it yet, but they might be out there. But I've searched a little while ago and I couldn't find anything.
It's really interesting. Thank you so much. I hope other people are finding it as interesting as me, I'm sure, because people are always interested in psychedelics.
I'm nerding out a little bit here on. Anyway, I hope you're following along. Sorry.
No, I am. And yeah, most of my knowledge, I haven't done any real research into breathwork. It's all been experiential. What my question is, like, it's free. We can all do it. It's just there. Like, if you think about, I don't know, like India and yoga, and that's a culture they've been brought up with, so they're aware of their. Why is it now? Like, why is it 2021 and most people don't know what breathwork is?
I've been thinking about that for a little while. Knowing that the breath has an impact, like you said, particularly in Eastern cultures, is very well understood. But in the West, for some reason, it's kind of just been swept under the rug as just this thing that sort of just happens unconsciously, and it just keeps me alive because I need oxygen, and that's about all it's useful for. And for me, in some ways, and this might be completely off, but I find that particularly in the West, I feel we seem to really value complexity. Like we like to, it's almost like the more complicated something is, then the better it is, or means the smarter we are, because we put so much value on intellect, right?
Get a certificate.
Yeah, exactly. So the idea that just by breathing in a certain way, it can really affect how you think, how you feel, and even your physical health might almost be too good to be true for many people, or too simple, and it might just be dismissed. Of course, we're not fortunate to have, the ancient cultures that have worked with this beautiful tool that we all have inside of us. So that's probably something. But, after, having taught this for quite a while now, and, going to many social gatherings, and when people ask you what you do, you say, well, I teach people how to breathe for a living. Most people kind of like, well, that sounds dumb and useless. Right. And so I think most people just think it's too simple. It's too obvious to actually have an effect. Yet, even if you look in our language, it's embedded that we in some way know that the breath has an effect. Like when your friend is struggling or crying or having a panic attack, what's the first thing you always say? Oh, it's okay. Take a deep breath. It's fine. You know, when something shocks us or amazes us, we say, "Oh, I took my breath away." So we know in a way that the breath has some sort of effect, yet we don't acknowledge it. But this is what's been so brilliant. And I think your story about, once March, April last year, the pandemic hit, you came back to breathwork or found it again. Um, I think it's such a good example of what's happening right now. I really believe that breathwork is the tool of our time. In that, like you say, it's just breathing, it's free, everyone can do it as long as you have one working nostril or a mouth and at least one working lung. You can do some form of breath work and really feel a benefit quickly. And because everyone's been locked in their home, uh, they've been looking for things that they can do at home, and thank God air is everywhere. And so, it's incredibly accessible. So it's been really exciting. I've seen the interest in breath work just skyrocket over the last year or so. And I just hope that that continues to spread and that people learn about this free medicine.
Brilliant. Free medicine. That's exactly what it is. I heard recently that they believe that the Buddha, thinking of Shakyamuni Buddha, the one that most people think of with his big belly, is actually a big belly from breath work, not a big belly from lots of Buddha bowls.
I hadn't heard that before. And I hadn't heard that before. One I had heard about the main Buddha that we think about is that when he found enlightenment, all he was doing was paying attention to his breath. That moment when he was sitting under the Bodhi tree, and all he was the final thing he was doing before pop was just the simple breath awareness meditation, which is an incredible form of breath work. And that's what I always say. The first step of breath work is simply breath awareness, because actually in becoming aware of your breath, there is so much information there. The way that we breathe is so intimately linked to our nervous system, which controls everything that happens inside of us. So if you start to become aware of your breathing, you can almost get a direct insight into what's happening in your nervous system, therefore how you're thinking, how you're feeling, what's happening in your body. And it's invaluable. It's like the most intimate form of introspection that you can do. So just watching your breath, even before you do any fancy breathing technique, is brilliant.
Yeah, it's also the first thing, if you're new to meditation, people just say, well, you just close your eyes and look and focus on your breathing. And that's it. And it's always so you've come back to the breath, and the same with yoga. And all of I practiced Kundalini yoga for many years, and it was always, a lot of the kriyas were often about strengthening the nervous system, so that it's not like a shot glass, but it's like a barrel, so that you're not swayed by life and triggered and it'll go into reaction, all those things. There's so many practices it all comes from, really, doesn't it? And tantra and that world.
Yeah. And I say, like, the breath is like the Swiss Army knife of the body. You can use it in so many different ways for so many use cases and benefits. And, even just within yoga and the various forms of yoga, whether it's the kriyas or whether it's, Kundalini, Hatha, like they all have unique ways of approaching the breath, with some overlap, obviously. But it's yeah. And you can look into Chinese medical forms of breathing, like things in Qigong. All this.
Just trying to see if we had any questions on my phone.
Oh, there you
There we
go.
are.
Is
We've
that
got
my
some people
voice?
live.
Gross.
Right, we just keep on getting ourselves echoed here. So if we've got some people live with us, and I'm just going to say now, if anyone has any questions for us today, and especially if we have Richie here as a one-off, put them in the chat. And I'll let you know if any come in for the last 10 minutes. But thank you for that. It's really interesting to think about And also, like, I notice in myself, I've become much more aware since doing breath work how often I find I'm holding my breath.
Yeah.
Just like, and I'm like, if someone asks me a question and I suddenly realize I've stopped breathing, it's like, oh, okay, Helen, like that's not going to help. And inspiration is like to inspire, to take in breath. And if you think about, or I think about when, you know, as we're in the gym and you know, see all the big bodybuilders, like they use their breath to always encourage when we're being trained to lift big weights, like to use the breath to make it. It's so like it's amazing. It's like becoming superhuman when you start to work with your breath and how much stronger you get.
Absolutely. I mean, in athletic endeavors, the breath is vital, you know, because obviously our breath is where we get our energy from. So, you know, I've worked with a lot of athletes around how do you optimize your breathing for whichever sport activity that you're doing, even things like recovery. Um, but to go back to, you know, say you notice that you're holding your breath, you know, it's so common, and it's actually a very normal reflex of the stress response. You know, most people think of the stress response as a fight or flight response, but it also has a freeze response as well. And so it's, you know, if you think about when we were caveman and cave women, maybe we were, you know, hunting in the forest or something like that, and then over to our left we see a rustle or hear a rustle in the bushes. Then what do? We go, we hold and we startle. It's like a gasp reflex, right? And basically, it's a freeze. It's I'm invisible because there might be a danger, and I'm going to stay invisible until I understand what the threat is. So it can, but in our modern day, and you know, it comes in as very simple and easy things. You know, it might be someone asks you a really difficult question and you don't know what the answer is, and you might just get that little tiny bit of panic in the back of your head. You just, oh my god, I don't know. Or, you know, writing a stressful email. You know, that's the one that happens so much, is when people are writing emails and they go, wait a minute, when was the last time I breathed? So, you know, but great to catch it. And once you become more aware of it, then that means that you can start to do something about it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's the awareness, isn't it?
Mm.
And you're I understand that you are running free breath work at the moment
Yeah.
for anybody who wants to try it or people who have experience. So talk to us a little bit about what you're doing.
So it's kind of become tradition that every lockdown I just try and breathe as many people as possible. In the first lockdown, I was doing sessions live free on Instagram live every day. And it was amazing because I think everyone was jumping on the everything online bandwagon and exploring and seeing what was available. So when in the height of lockdown in March and April, we were getting like 1,500 people a session, you know, jumping in and breathing. It was wild, so cool. Yeah, but so yeah, once again, since the UK is in lockdown, so I'm offering sessions on Instagram Live every Thursday and every Sunday at 8 p.m. UK time. They go for about anywhere between 45 minutes to 50 minutes, 55 minutes or so. Um, and they all have
How do we find you on Instagram? Is it the
the
breath guy?
breath guy on Instagram. Yep.
Great. And if while
Uh,
you're there, if you want to connect with me, I do lots of lives and insights and tarot on Instagram on Cacao Calling. So those links will be in the chat below.
and buy her cacao as well. It's Am I your best customer yet? I don't know. Like, I've ordered so much. I feel.
There's tough
Uh,
competition.
is there really?
Yeah. And
Damn
I've
it.
shipped it to as far as Australia um, and the States. And yeah, I have, it is one of the reasons why I think the cacao that I work with is so delicious and powerful is because it is sustainably and ethically sourced, and it comes from a really small farming cooperative where the ethos is so much in alignment with the plant itself and mother nature and working with the land, and nothing's overproduced and rushed through. So it's really top quality. And I'm just so grateful that I never run out, because I have a never-ending supply, which is just such a great,
So good.
and it's such a great tool. And as we were talking at the beginning about being able to live more from your heart, we often have many blocks here, through trauma, through life, through just getting through, because it's seen to be very vulnerable. And when we open our hearts, we get hurt, and that happens enough when we shut down here. And sometimes it can be people don't even know where to start, and people who don't naturally like talking, it can be more traumatic to have to talk about how you feel, and that doesn't necessarily open things up. It can compound things. So cacao is a really great way of moving energy in the body, opening up the heart, and it sends up to 40% more blood around your brain, so you can think much more creatively, and it heightens the senses. And it's actually a beautiful ally with cacao. I ran a retreat in the summer, and we had a cacao ceremony followed by a breath work. It was really, really deep, profound, in the middle of this amazing woodland.
Oh my gosh, sounds incredible.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. I can vouch for the creativity part. I will drink cacao just before I journal, or just when I need to think about things, just because it's you just feel that you are able to tap into your intuition so much more deeply, and answers just come flying. So yeah, I'm a convert, that's for sure.
Well, there we go. We're getting people's diaries full up, because Tuesday you can go and breathe with Rich. Oh, Thursday.
Thursday and Sunday.
Wednesday you can come to midweek medicine and drink cacao with me, and Thursday you can go and breathe with Richie.
There we go.
You're
You're
being
all sorted, guys. What else do you need in your life?
exactly. I haven't seen any questions come through. So is there anything else that you would like to share before we close?
One thing I'll say about my Instagram live sessions is that the replays are being saved not on Instagram TV, but actually on my app. My app's called Flourish. You can find it on all the app stores, and so you can find the replays and you can watch them for free on the app. Plus, there's a lot of other free content on there as well. Lots of recorded, pre-recorded breathwork journeys, all that good stuff. Yeah, it's I just highly encourage anyone who's never tried breathwork before just to give it a go, because like you said, it doesn't cost anything, perfectly free. And the great thing is that once you learn how to do it and become comfortable with it, then you don't even need a teacher or guidance anymore. You've just got a tool in your pocket for the rest of your life. So yeah, but I think that's about it, Helen. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you.
It's been brilliant, Richie. And thank you to everybody who joined live. I will be back live on Tuesday evening, midweek medicine on Wednesday, Richie's on Thursday. See you there, and have a beautiful weekend.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.